Welcome to Godless Truth. If you're here, chances are you're someone who values critical thinking, who questions the world around you, and who is comfortable with the idea that "I don't know" can sometimes be the most honest answer. Today's video is an exploration of 40 specific questions that have historically posed significant challenges to theistic belief systems. These are not gotcha questions designed to be clever or abrasive. They are rooted in philosophy, logic, and moral reasoning, disciplines that have probed the nature of reality and morality for millennia. The goal is not to tell anyone what to believe, but to encourage a thoughtful, evidence-based approach to one of humanity's oldest and most pervasive ideas, the existence of a god or gods. We will not use insults, mockery, or straw man arguments. Instead, we will calmly and rationally examine these questions. If you are a theist, I encourage you to view this not as an attack, but as an invitation to engage with challenging aspects of your faith. If you are an atheist or a skeptic, I hope these questions provide a useful framework for your own thinking and conversations. This video is divided into 10 well-defined chapters, each addressing 4 specific questions related to a central theme. We will explore topics ranging from the nature of an all-powerful being to the problem of suffering. The journey through these 40 questions will require a willingness to sit with complexity and a commitment to the pursuit of truth, wherever it may lead. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Paradoxes of Omnipotence. 1. If God is all-powerful, can He create a stone that is so heavy He cannot lift it? This is one of the classic and perhaps most famous paradoxes of omnipotence. It's not a new question. It has been discussed by philosophers and theologians for centuries. The core of the issue lies in the definition of omnipotence, or the quality of being all-powerful. If we assume that a theistic God is all-powerful, this includes the ability to perform any action that is not logically contradictory. So the question is creating a stone that the Creator cannot lift a logically contradictory concept? If the answer is yes, God can create such a stone, then we are faced with a second action, lifting the stone. If God has created a stone that He Himself cannot lift, then there is at least one thing God cannot do: lift the stone. Therefore, He is not all-powerful. His ability to create has limited His ability to lift. If the answer is no, God cannot create such a stone, then right from the start we have found something that an all-powerful being cannot do. If there are limitations on what God can create, the attribute of omnipotence is already compromised. This paradox exposes a fundamental incoherence in the standard definition of omnipotence. If an all-powerful being can do anything, that includes the ability to limit its own power. However, once it does that, it is no longer all-powerful. This question doesn't have a satisfactory answer that preserves the absolute definition of omnipotence, and instead suggests that the concept itself is logically unstable. 2. If God can do anything that is not logically contradictory, could He have created a world containing free will but no moral evil? This question directly addresses the free will defense, a common theological response to the problem of evil. The free will defense argues that the existence of moral evil in the world is a necessary consequence of God giving humans the greater good of free will. The argument goes, if God made us to be truly free, we must have the capacity to choose between good and evil. Unfortunately, some of us choose evil. The challenge, however, is this: if God is truly omnipotent and omniscient, and if creating a world with free will and no moral evil is not a logical contradiction, why didn't He create that world? Consider a person who has free will. In any given situation, they have a choice to do good or to do bad. An omniscient being would know what choice that person will make in any given circumstance. If God has the power to create and to know all possible outcomes, why could He not create a world populated solely by people who always freely choose to do the good? For example, when a mother is about to abuse her child, why can't God, using His omnipotence, subtly and without interfering with her free will, introduce a thought or an external event that causes her to reconsider and freely choose not to commit the act? Why can't this be the norm rather than the exception? If a world with free will and no moral evil is a possible state of affairs, and if a perfectly good being would want to actualize such a state of affairs, the fact that our world is not like this presents a powerful challenge to the idea that our world was created by an omnipotent and perfectly good being. 3. Can an all-powerful, perfectly good being create something that is morally right to do, but that He Himself cannot do? This question gets into the heart of the complex relationship between omnipotence, which is a quality of power, and omnibenevolence, which is a quality of goodness. It's a more subtle and nuanced variation of the stone-lifting paradox, focused on moral actions. Let's define some hypothetical moral action, X, that is considered to be morally perfect and necessary. Now, consider an action that requires imperfection to perform. For example, in some philosophical systems, sacrificing one's own perfect integrity for a greater good might be considered a form of moral heroism. It's a right action that is fundamentally paradoxical. Could a perfectly good and powerful being, someone who is incapable of imperfection, perform such an action? If the answer is no, he cannot because he is perfectly good, then his goodness has created a limitation on his power. He cannot perform a certain type of action, even if it is considered morally good or right in some contexts. If the answer is yes, he can perform an action that requires imperfection, then we are in serious trouble. If he can act with imperfection even for a good cause, then he is no longer essentially or necessarily perfectly good. The attribute of omnibenevolence is lost. This question highlights a potential conflict between two essential divine attributes. To be all-powerful means you can do anything, but to be perfectly good might mean you are restricted from certain actions. This question forces us to either limit God's power to fit His goodness or compromise His goodness to fit His power. Both options undermine the traditional concept of a theistic God. 4. How can a being who cannot experience the world from a human perspective, because he is a timeless, non-physical being, be all-powerful? Omnipotence is typically defined as having all power, but knowledge is also a form of power. The traditional theistic view is that God is both omnipotent and omniscient, all-knowing. However, a critical tension arises when we consider the type of knowledge that is available to a purely spiritual, timeless, and all-knowing being. Consider human experiences that are inextricably linked to our physical, temporal, and imperfect nature. What is it like to be confused? What is it like to feel a physical sensation like hunger or the thrill of a surprise? What does it feel like to make a mistake and then learn from it? A timeless, all-knowing, and perfect being would, by definition, never be confused, never feel a physical sensation, never be surprised, and never make a mistake. If God knows the truth of all propositions, that's called propositional knowledge. He knows that the statement, "I am hungry," is true for me, but he doesn't have the experiential knowledge of what it feels like to be hungry. If there is a type of knowledge, experiential knowledge from a non-divine perspective, that God cannot possess, then his knowledge is not complete. His omniscience is compromised. This question challenges the coherence of the core theistic concept that a being can be all-powerful and all-knowing while simultaneously existing in a way that makes major categories of knowledge, by their nature, impossible to possess. Chapter 2. the silence of omnibenevolence. 5. If God is all-knowing, he must know about every event of profound human suffering. If he is all-powerful, he could have prevented it. If he is perfectly good, he would want to prevent it. So why is there so much unnecessary and gratuitous suffering? This is the problem of suffering, perhaps the most visceral and enduring challenge to theistic belief. It's a question that doesn't come from a desire to be argumentative, but from a place of shared human experience and empathy. It's the question a mother asks when her child is diagnosed with a terminal illness. It's the question a refugee asks as they flee a war zone. The argument is a classic deductive argument that exposes a logical contradiction among three essential theistic attributes: